Maria's footsteps echoed against the cobblestone street as she hurried to the coffee shop on her usual route. It was a chilly morning and the fog hung low, wrapping the city in an eerie stillness. She'd just rounded the corner when she saw it again. The same cat, perched on the edge of the sidewalk, its amber eyes scanning the road like it was searching for something or someone. The cat's presence was strangely magnetic. Unlike other stray animals that darted away at the slightest movement, this one remained rooted to its spot, exuding a quiet determination. Its fur, though unkempt, still carried a hint of its former sleekness, and its posture was oddly regal as if it had once belonged to someone who had adored it. "What are you waiting for, little guy?" Maria murmured, stopping for a moment. The cat didn't flinch, its gaze fixed on the horizon with an intensity that piqued her curiosity. This wasn't the first time she'd seen the feline. In fact, it had been there every morning for the past 2 weeks. Rain or shine, the cat sat in the same spot, immovable, as if tethered to that stretch of pavement by some invisible force. Maria couldn't help but notice how passers-by ignored the cat completely. They walked by without sparing it a glance, too absorbed in their routines to see the silent drama unfolding before them. But Maria saw it, and the sight stayed with her long after she disappeared into the hum of her daily life. There was something haunting about the cat's persistence, something that made her chest ache in a way she couldn't quite explain. The mystery clung to Maria's thoughts throughout the day. Who owned the cat? Why did it always wait there? She decided she'd find out. The next morning, she stuffed a small bag of tuna into her purse before heading out. When she approached the cat, it eyed her cautiously, its tail flicking with mild annoyance. Maria crouched down and placed the tuna on the ground, then stepped back. The cat sniffed the offering and devoured it hungrily, but it still didn't leave its spot. Instead, it resumed its vigil, staring down the street like it was waiting for a ghost to appear. "What's so special about this place?" Maria whispered. The cat offered no answers, but Maria's determination to uncover the truth had been ignited. That evening she researched local animal shelters and lost pet forums, hoping to find a clue about the cat's past. There were no missing reports that matched its description. Frustrated but not deterred, Maria resolved to dig deeper. The next morning she packed a thermos of tea, a folding chair, and a notebook, ready to spend her day unraveling the enigma of the stray cat that refused to move. Maria arrived at the spot earlier than usual, her thermos of tea and notepad in hand. The morning air was crisp and the streets were just beginning to stir with life. She found the cat sitting in its usual place, its amber eyes scanning the horizon with the same unwavering focus. Maria settled into her folding chair a few feet away, determined to observe its every move. For hours the cat remained motionless. It sat with an almost statuesque stillness, broken only by the occasional stretch or flick of its tail. Maria scribbled notes in her pad, jotting down every detail: the way it tilted its head at passing cars, the subtle twitch of its ears at distant sounds, and the way it seemed to deflate slightly as the hours passed without any sign of what it was waiting for. Passers-by came and went, their footsteps blending into the background hum of the city. Some glanced at Maria curiously, but no one seemed to take notice of the cat. It was as if the animal existed in its own separate world, invisible to everyone but her. As the afternoon wore on, Maria's patience began to wane. She shifted in her chair, sipping her now lukewarm tea and wondering if she was wasting her time. Just as she was about to pack up and leave, the cat stirred. It rose to its feet, stretched languidly, and began walking with deliberate steps down the street. Maria's heart leapt. This was the first time she'd seen the cat move from its spot. She grabbed her things and followed at a safe distance, careful not to startle it. The cat's path was purposeful, weaving through narrow alleys and crossing quiet streets with the confidence of an animal that knew exactly where it was going. The journey felt like an adventure. Each turn brought new questions. Where was the cat leading her? What would she find at the end of this trial? Her pulse quickened with a mix of excitement and apprehension as the cat led her into a part of the neighborhood she rarely visited. The streets grew quieter, the buildings older and more worn. Finally, the cat stopped in front of an abandoned house. Its once white paint had faded to a dull gray, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. The windows were boarded up, and the front door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the breeze. The cat slipped through a gap in the fence and disappeared into the shadows of the yard. Maria hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. The house exuded an air of sadness as if it held secrets too heavy to bear. But Maria's curiosity outweighed her fear. She climbed through the gap in the fence and followed the cat into the yard. Inside, the house was a tableau of decay. Dust-covered furniture sat untouched, and faded photographs hung crookedly on the walls. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and thyme. The cat led Maria to a corner of the living room, where a tattered blanket lay on the floor. It curled up on the blanket and let out a soft, mournful meow. Maria's throat tightened as she took in the scene. The blanket, though threadbare, had once been vibrant with color, and beside it sat a small, tarnished bowl that had clearly been used for food or water. It was as if the cat had brought her to a shrine of memories, a place that spoke of love and loss in equal measure. "What happened here?" Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. The cat's amber eyes met hers, and in that moment, Maria felt an overwhelming connection. This wasn't just a stray cat, it was a soul tethered to a past it couldn't let go of. And now, Maria was a part of its story. Determined to learn more, Maria began asking around the neighborhood. Most people shrugged off her questions, but an elderly man at the corner store paused when she described the cat. "That sounds like Mrs. Henderson's old cat," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "She passed away a few months ago. Lived alone except for that cat. They were inseparable." Maria's stomach sank. The pieces began to fit together. "No one took the cat in?" she asked. The man shook his head. "The family didn't care about the cat. They sold the house and left. Poor thing's been hanging around ever since. Guess it doesn't know she's gone." Tears stung Maria's eyes as she returned to the abandoned house. The cat had been waiting, for weeks, maybe months, for someone who would never return. Maria sat on the porch steps, her resolve hardening. She couldn't let this loyal creature suffer any longer. Maria returned to the abandoned house every day, her heart set on giving the cat a new chance at life. Each visit was a delicate dance of patience and persistence. She would sit on the creaky porch steps, speaking softly to the cat as it watched her from a distance. Though it no longer darted away at her presence, the trust she sought was still out of reach. She brought blankets to shield the cat from the biting chill of winter and bowls of food and water to ease its hunger. The cat would approach cautiously, sniffing the offerings before eating, but always keeping a wary eye on Maria. These moments were small victories, but they gave her hope. One particularly frigid evening, Maria arrived with a thermos of soup and a fleece-lined carrier. Snowflakes fell softly, dusting the overgrown yard in a pristine white blanket. The cat sat on the porch, its amber eyes glowing against the gray backdrop of the house. Maria knelt a few feet away, holding out a piece of salmon she'd saved from her dinner. "Come on, Henderson," she coaxed, using the name she'd chosen for the cat. "You don't have to stay here anymore." For a long moment, the cat simply stared at her. Then, slowly and cautiously, it stepped forward. Maria held her breath as Henderson closed the gap between them, finally brushing its head against her outstretched hand. Her heart swelled with relief and joy. She gently stroked its fur, feeling the tension in its small body begin to ease. "This is it," she whispered. "We're going home." Maria opened the carrier and waited. Henderson hesitated, its instincts battling its newfound trust. Finally, it stepped inside, curling up on the soft blanket she'd placed inside. Tears welled in Maria's eyes as she secured the carrier and picked it up. The cat didn't resist, its body trembling slightly but remaining calm. Back at her apartment, Maria set up a cozy corner for Henderson with a plush bed, toys, and food bowls. The cat explored cautiously, its tail flicking as it sniffed every corner of the room. Maria gave it space, letting it adjust at its own pace. That night, as she settled into bed, Maria felt a soft weight press against her feet. She looked down to see Henderson curling up there, its eyes half closed in contentment. Maria smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known she needed. "You're safe now," she murmured. "No more waiting. No more loneliness." In the days that followed, Maria and Henderson began to rebuild their lives together. There were challenges. Henderson often sat by the window, staring out as if expecting Mrs. Henderson to return. Maria understood that grief wasn't something that could be rushed. She decided to honor the bond between the cat and its late owner by keeping a small memento, a locket she'd found in the abandoned house. Inside was a photo of Mrs. Henderson holding the cat as a kitten, their love captured in a single, timeless moment. Maria placed the locket on her mantle as a tribute to the woman who had unknowingly brought them together. It was a reminder that even in the face of loss, love could endure, taking on new forms and giving life to new beginnings. Months passed, and Henderson blossomed into a vibrant, affectionate companion. Maria often marveled at the resilience of animals, how they could endure loss and still find it within themselves to love again. One afternoon, Maria took Henderson to the local park. As they sat on a bench, a little girl approached, her eyes wide with wonder. "Can I pet your cat?" she asked. Henderson, ever the charmer, leaned into the girl's touch. Maria smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known she needed. You know, Maria said, this cat taught me something important. Sometimes love doesn't end, it just changes shape. Henderson meowed in agreement and Maria laughed. Together, they had turned a heartbreaking truth into a story of hope and new beginnings. As the sun set, Maria thought about Mrs. Henderson and the invisible thread that had connected their lives. She whispered a silent thank you to the woman who had unknowingly given her the greatest gift, the chance to love and be loved by a stray cat waiting for a second chance.